Hey everyone, this presentation is about the transitional self, in particular the development of identity. There's theory that there's a transitional growth crisis that occurs for everyone, and when biological and social spheres require a person to organize and develop an identity, it becomes more complex than just assuming various roles. This usually happens in adolescence, and this is a life phase where culture, role expectations, and style are all reinforced by cultural expectations. And this occurs generally after puberty, but before adulthood. This period of time is very much a who am I period of time. This is when one forms their own sense of identity or ego identity. There's various components of personality that start coming into integrating into the self. There's two notable characteristics of adolescence, and that would be moratorium and negative identity. This is kind of a little bit of an example of a moratorium. Basically, the adolescent is trying to form an identity, and they may do so by kind of emulating role models, be it somebody awesome like The Rock, who's definitely into philanthropy and things like that, or maybe some less favorable role models. I'm sure we can all think of some. This is a period of time where they're generally given some slack because, adults will realize, okay, they're trying to figure out who they are, so we'll just kind of let them do their thing and go through these different phases of trying out different identities until they figure out who they really are. There's also a negative identity that might be formed when the adolescent kind of goes towards things that go against the social norm. Maybe joining a gang, maybe getting into punk rock music or becoming emo, what have you. They kind of go against society a little bit and rebel. There's some other factors in identity formation. Peer groups like friends, church groups, that sort of thing. They definitely influence someone's personality development, as does one's education and their culture. There's some classic troubles of the adolescent identity, and these are psychosis, neurosis, and delinquency. Now, they're not as bad as they sound. Any small form of psychosis in the adolescent stage could be mood swings, problems with body image and sexual identification, a feeling that, everyone's against me, that whole teenage angst thing that is played up in the media, and it's kind of like a stereotype. Neurosis could be in the form of conflict between their desires and their impulses and what they know is right, a little bit of identity confusion while they're seeking to find out who they are, having an idea of what their ideal self is versus what their actual self is. Some delinquency would take the form of inner demands versus outer expectations of the adolescent, which causes a sort of internal conflict. During this time, they may even reject cultural values and things they've learned from their family. Some more key points to consider in closing. Adolescence is definitely a time where there's a crisis of self-development. During this time, personality subsystems are rapidly shifting and changing, whereas childhood's kind of steady. The child is basically looks to the caregiver and the parents and kind of grows and develops. During adolescence, it's like a big spike, and it's like a roller coaster in a way. That might be due to hormones, but it's also due to this period of identity crisis and identity formation. It's basically a question of what to be or what not to be. And what happens during this time can really determine one's adulthood, because this identity formation period helps the adolescent develop into an adult and helps them to learn how to form relationships with others and to know themselves.